KFC China is the crown jewels of young food. However, in recent years, this jewel has become tarnished due to a number of scandals. In order to maximise value for shareholders, KFC China needs to react to these scandals now and regain its market leader position in the fast food industry. Today you've asked us, how can KFC grow in China? In order for KFC to restore its reputation and to grow in China, it needs to do three things. It needs to regroup, refresh, and rebrand. Currently, KFC gets all of its chickens from 25 processors in China. These processors, in turn, source their chickens from 9,000 disparate farmers from across China. However, it's a string of high-profile incidents within this complex supply chain which has tarnished KFC's reputation. As a result, Chinese consumers no longer trust the safety of KFC's chicken or the sincerity of KFC's management. Therefore, today we present to you our strategy, Taking Flight, which has three arms. The first arm is Regroup, and this addresses the complexity and efficiencies within your supply chain. Under this arm of the strategy, KFC will only source its chickens from processors who are in a cooperative profit-sharing relationship with your farmers. In addition to this, KFC will also take a stake within these cooperatives. Furthermore, they'll also develop safety teams which will conduct random safety checks at these processors throughout the year, in addition to its national audit. The second arm of the strategy is Refresh, and this comprises of a comprehensive refurbishment of KFC's interiors of selected stores. This will be done to usher in a new era of KFC in China. And the final arm of Taking Flight is Rebrand. This not only restores, but also enhances KFC's reputation in China. Under this arm of the strategy, KFC will become the home of chicken in China. Moreover, KFC will also become a responsible corporate player through the establishment of the Colonel Sanders Community Fund. By implementing our strategy, Taking Flight, KFC can expect to see a 230% increase in revenue within the next 5 years. That was an overview of our presentation. I'll now pass on to Hayden and Victoria for analysis and strategy.
In analysing your company, we identified three key issues: supply chain, maturing market, and consumer behaviour. As Samantha already articulated, there is a lengthy supply chain which extends to over 9,000 different farmers. There are two impacts of the distance between KFC and where the chicken is originally grown and sourced. The first is that there is a large amount of risk in the quality and standard of the chicken that is being delivered to KFC. The large distance makes this incredibly difficult to monitor. Secondly, your key input, your chicken, is outside of your direct control, which again adds risk and insecurity to your business operations.
The second key issue is that of a maturing market. KFC, being the first foreign fast food chain into China, has paved the way and educated the market as to the benefits of a Western fast food chain. However, in recent years, due to the increasing competition by your competitors, as well as the food safety scandals, KFC has begun to lose its market share and its market dominant position. Therefore, KFC needs to refresh and have a particular growth strategy in order to regain that top market position.
The final issue relates to consumer behaviour. There is increasing awareness and education about the importance of food safety and quality within China. Because of this increased education and awareness, the Chinese consumer is incredibly sensitive to adverse events. On the slide you can see that even the smallest drop in reputation has a relatively larger impact on consumer demand for KFC. The speed and proliferation of social media means that even the smallest rumour can have that large and material effect on your customer demand. You must minimise and eliminate any adverse events or damage to your reputation in order to maintain your market leadership.
So in light of this analysis, we've constructed our strategy, Taking Flight, which has three key arms: regroup, refocus, and rebrand.
Under Regroup, we see you taking an ownership position in cooperatives. The cooperatives that you now associate will be exclusively ones where farmers have an equity and profit-sharing relationship with the cooperative processor. We'll also introduce two new teams, one of farm managers who will regularly monitor and educate farmers about best practice in chickens. Secondly, there'll be a new food safety team who do random audits at all times in order to increase the frequency, the thoroughness and the depth in your food safety regimes.
The second arm of our strategy is refocus, which will see you refit your stores to become a more inviting and more family-friendly establishment. This will have the impact of making KFC a destination restaurant, not just a place to eat, but a place to enjoy and a place for families to come. We see that by refitting your stores and having an emphasis on family, children will be more likely to bring their parents along to these stores, creating one, hype, and two, an increase in revenue and same-store sales.
The final arm of our strategy, Taking Flight, sees you communicate the things that we're doing under regroup and refocus.
So there's three key ways to do that. The first of this is a Commonwealth Sanders Community Trust, focusing on community development and the perception of you as a corporate citizen. The second element is a Nothing to Hide campaign, where KFC will market themselves using raw footage from Chinese consumers, addressing directly their concerns in a sincere and full capacity.
Our strategy, Taking Flight, brings in a new era of KFC within China. You're currently perceived to have poor health and safety records. Under our strategy, Taking Flight, the regroup arm will see you become a leader in food safety standards, and our Nothing to Hide marketing campaign will reinforce and educate the consumer that this is the case. You have declining market share with the increased competitive nature and increase of other fast food outlets. Under our strategy, with refocus, you'll rejuvenate the KFC brand and reaffirm your position as a market leader. By communicating you are the house of chicken or the home of chicken in China, we'll see the customers coming back into KFC stores as their preferred choice. Finally, you're seen as an insincere or ingenuine company within your communication to customers and are perceived to be somewhat apathetic as to customer needs. Under our strategy, you'll become a respected corporate citizen, communicating your intention to stay in China and give back to the community.
That was an overview of our strategy, and we'll now like to pass to Matt to walk you through the financial implications.
Thank you, Adam and Victoria. So we'll start with regroup, which is all about ensuring the quality and supply of your chickens. This will come through the setting up and supporting of cooperatives who will farm the chickens. And this is going to be first come through the cooperative fund. This is where we set aside $100 million to be spent over the first 5 years to support these cooperatives and any changes in their cooperative structure, as we take a minority stake and help take United States technologies and standards to these cooperatives to help improve and ensure the quality. There will also be farm managers, which we have estimated will cost $500,000 per year, who will go out and support these changes and monitor the changes at each of these cooperative processing plants and the associated farms. There may be no immediate revenue gains from this strategy, but the revenue will be and the cost will be recouped through the rebranding that I will show you later, which will be based on this improved quality of your chicken. The second arm of the strategy, refresh, and where we aim to increase the same-store sales. This is where we now refurbish 1,000 stores over the next 5 years, roughly 200 a year. These will be targeted in the most run-down stores, in particular in Tier 1 cities and key locations in Tier 2 and 3 cities across China. The cost for refurbishment has been estimated at $100,000 per store, which will mean there will be $100 million spent on refurbishments in total over the next 5 years. As I've said, this is likely to increase store visits, as we're going to give it a more of a family feel, with playgrounds and much more cleaner looking services and brighter lights to help improve the quality of the finishings so it looks more hygienic and more up to standard, as such as we see in Western stores throughout the world. This will see same-store customer numbers increase from 5,000 currently to 6,000 per week. That is a 20% increase due to these refurbishments. And therefore, same-store sales will also increase 20%, increasing to $1.62 million per store, an increase of $270,000 per store a year. The third arm of our strategy is about the rebrand. This comes with a marketing cost of $10 million, which will be implemented in the first year, as we highlight the changes we have made to our quality standards and share this with the whole of China. So this will cost $50 million per year, not $10 million. And then this will be supported along with the community fund we'll be setting up, where each store will set aside $2,000 of their revenue per year to be given back to their local communities. With the number of stores operating by the 5th year, this will equal $15.2 million US fed back into local charities at each of these stores across China. This will help increase the brand perception, aided with Strategy 1, and will help increase store visits again. This is because people can now understand and ensure the quality of the chicken. They feel much safer eating at KFC again and more likely to come in and spend money here. We have estimated this change as 5% same-store sales in the first year and 10% same-store sale increases each year from the 2nd to 5th year. I'd now like to look at the overall financial gain of our three arms of the strategy. Your current plan is to implement 700 stores you currently implemented 700 new stores in 2013, lifting your current number of stores to 5,100. This is not the focus of our strategy. Therefore, we have wound back this program to only increase 400 stores in the 4th and 5th years. Still, your store numbers in China will still increase to 7,600 by 2018. As I said, the same-store revenue is going to increase from 1.35 million currently a year to 2.8 million per store in 2018. This will see revenue for the company increase from 6,905 million to 15,808 million US dollars. While at the same time we'll get the added benefit from the refit stores, which will be 500 stores by the end of year 1, which is 130 million additional benefit from these refits. This will lead total revenues to increase 230% to $15,943 million. I'll now hand back to Hayden and Victoria for implementation.
So just to recap for you, our strategy taking flight is 3 key arms: regroup, refocus, and rebrand.
I'd like to start by walking you through the implementation of the regroup arm of our strategy. I'd like to draw your attention to the middle of the slide, which is about only engaging with processors who have a cooperative, equity-based structure. By that we mean that the farmers need to have a direct ownership stake in the processor and receive dividend revenue as a result. The reason that this is crucial is that because it aligns the incentives of the farmers more directly with those of KFC. They will get paid a premium for producing chicken that is up to the adequate food and safety standards of KFC. As a result of their ownership stake in the company, they'll be incentivized to maximize the processor or cooperative's revenue because of the flow-down effect back to them. The trade-off of this, however, is there is also going to be increased risk on each individual farmer. If the chicken that they produce is found not to be up to the KFC quality standard, we will reduce the premium they get paid for that chicken and consider cutting off tries with that cooperative processor altogether. By aligning the risks and incentives of the farmers directly with KFC, we will reduce the occurrence of food safety issues. A further arm of this strategy is KFC taking an ownership stake into these processing cooperatives. This will increase the visibility you have over the cooperative and the farmers at the end of the supply chain, as well as being able to enhance the degree of control KFC has over its most important input, the chicken. We'll also be implementing 2 new teams. The first is a new food safety audit team, as the previous once-a-year STAR regulation audit, as carried out by Yum Group Global, is insufficient for the Chinese market. They will do random and regular spot testing of farmers and processors alike in order to make sure that the chicken is making the adequate food safety standards at all times. We'll also be introducing a team of farm managers. You'll identify the top performing farmers currently providing chicken to KFC. You'll send them overseas to America to be trained and educated about the importance of food safety technology and best practice farming. They will then help disseminate that education and learnings across the farming community within their processor group.
Thank you. So the implementation of Refocus has 2 key aspects. The first is the outfitting. As Matt has already mentioned, you aim to refit 1,000 stores within 5 years, which is 200 stores per year. These will be undertaken concurrently. After you finish the first store, you move on to the second store within that region. The store outfits will be focusing on a new white, clean interior. Note that you will not be mainly focusing on upgrading the equipment, though you need to do that as necessary, but it's mainly focusing on the aesthetics of the KFC restaurants. This will drive a new family focus, in addition to the playgrounds that you'll be adding, which will hopefully gain more children that are interested in coming to KFC, as well as more families. The second arm of the refocus is adding deliveries to your revenue line. These deliveries can be taken in two ways, online or over the phone, and you need this relevant infrastructure to support those. This will be done through hiring extra delivery staff who will deliver the KFC to the customers via scooter.
The third arm of our strategy is rebrand. There are three aspects to this: the Colonel Sanders Community Trust, the Nothing to Hide campaign, and the Best Chicken campaign.
As for the Colonel Sanders Community Trust, they'll be run on a regional administration with trustees appointed who are local community leaders. They will assess projects that are worthy and have the public support to be funded. These suggestions will come obviously from the public or from the trustees themselves, and as Matt has previously mentioned, each store within that region will contribute $2,000 out of their revenue for that fund.
The second element of this strategy is what we've called the Nothing to Hide campaign. Your previous efforts to address food safety concerns have come off as insincere and ingenuine. To counter this, we'd like a marketing campaign led by the consumers themselves. You will survey and identify willing participants who are ready to discuss their concerns and worries about KFC on camera. They will be filmed, and this will produce the basis of a short video that will be comprised of them articulating their current concerns, and then a KFC employee articulating back to the camera exactly what has been done to counter and mitigate these risks, and why KFC is not going to make any of these flaws going forward. You'll target the feelings of the customer and then convey the appropriate facts to help mitigate these concerns.
After the public safety concerns have been addressed, you can pursue a Best Chicken campaign, focusing on putting KFC China back on top. This can be done through celebrity endorsement, where local community chefs are able to create their favourite KFC dish, which will be held as a special amongst the local and regional KFC outlets on a rotational basis. Additionally, you should emphasise that KFC is the house of chicken for China, that you offer a good product that people love.
That was an overview of exactly how we're implementing our strategy. We'll now pass back to Samantha to talk about some risks and then conclude.
We've identified a few potential risks with the implementation of our strategy taking flight. The first potential risk that we've identified is processor resistance to this new cooperative profit-sharing structure. In order to respond to this, KFC needs to communicate two things. Firstly, the benefits to the processor of this cooperative structure. These include information sharing from KFC to the cooperative, research and development in order to not only increase the yield of the farmers' chickens, but also optimizing the chicken processing systems for the processors themselves. The second thing that they need to communicate is that they will only engage with a cooperative structure. So KFC is a large purchaser of chickens in China, and we believe that their purchasing power is enough to persuade these cooperatives to adopt a profit-sharing structure. The second risk is something that is shared by all businesses in the fast food industry, and that's potential health scandals. In order to mitigate against this, KFC needs to adopt a robust policy in order to be able to respond effectively to these situations. And these include communicating that KFC needs to have a fast response, a fast apology, transparency with the media and the public about the steps that they're taking to mitigate these, and also they need to learn from these mistakes and reassess their processes to prevent situations like this from happening again in the future. So today you've asked us, how can KFC grow in China? Through our strategy taking flight, we've shown that KFC needs to regroup, refresh and rebrand. By adopting this strategy, KFC can expect to see a 230% increase in revenue over the next 5 years. 3 things that KFC can do tomorrow in order to begin implementing the strategy are assemble a safety team to conduct the audits of these new processing plants and farms, design the store refresh, And thirdly, begin establishing the Colonel Sanders Community Trust. Thank you, that was our presentation, and we'll now open for questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and we go to the 15 minutes Q&A, and we'll be also very strict keeping the time, and I will raise the placards as well. So we start.
Right, then I've got a question. Yeah, so the Chinese are renowned for the use of blogs and internet technology and things. So you had a campaign about the Nothing to Hide campaign using videos. How would you envisage that being tied in with the internet usage that the Chinese engage in?
Because in this industry, reputation is so important, we believe that the Nothing to Hide campaign needs to be put on a number of different platforms. Firstly, it needs to be communicated via mass media, so a TV campaign, to reach the majority of KFC's Chinese consumers. Secondly, KFC can also put this on its social media platforms, so its website, Facebook page, and Twitter, and these can subsequently be shared by KFC's followers in order to further disseminate the steps that KFC is trying to take to restore its reputation.
I have a question. I really love the presentation, so good job. I like the three-step approach, which is regroup, refresh, and then rebrand. I get regroup and I get rebrand because it's linked to the problem. I'm not sure about refresh, because in refresh there seems to be a suggestion that there's something wrong with the stores right now. And when you look at the situation, we don't seem to think that that is the problem. So I'm interested to find out why, for you, that's it. And you mentioned family and kids, which we agree, but related to the issue at hand, it seems like a distant connection. So if you can elaborate on that a little bit more.
We see that the competitive landscape in the Chinese fast food market has now matured, and the number of competitors such as Deco's and McDonald's are getting more aggressive in gaining market share. So although our strategy, refresh, is not directly related to the pressing issues, it's about bouncing back from some of the setbacks that KFC has suffered and taking an aggressive growth campaign in order to regain some of the market share that these competitors have started to take off you.
Thank you.
Actually, I have one question as well about the refresh part, because as we know, the KFC has been very successful in China for years. Will that strategy about refurbishment of the store or anything, will that contradict a bit about the brand itself, which has been built for decades, about the brand awareness and anything? I just want to know, elaborate a bit more about on that point, because that is, to me, it can be a two-edged sword. You change the whole look, and also may not fit with the brand image itself.
It's about welcoming KFC into a new era, and it's again about bouncing back from some of the setbacks. We think that in order to convince the Chinese consumers and in order to regain their trust, you need to show to them some real contribution or real sort of commitment to China. So this growth and refresh campaign is about showing them that this is a new era. We're not going to keep making the same mistakes of the past. And the rebrand is a little bit more subtle. It's sort of just a modernization and trying to get people back into KFC who might have changed their purchase decision from KFC to McDonald's because of the scandals. So it's more of a sort of bouncing back and showing the Chinese community that you're here to stay, you're committed to the Chinese market, and you've learned from your mistakes of the past.
And in relation to the potential customer confusion, these refurbishments won't change the traditional and iconic red and white colour of KFC, nor will it change the logo. It's really just about freshening up the store so it's brighter, and also generating some hype around these new store openings in order to reassert KFC's position in the fast food industry to Chinese consumers.
Thank you, Smith. I think that's one very key point, because that's a very one of the things when you start talking about this. I don't know whether it's a total rebrand or just refurbishment, a small touch-up. Thank you.
Okay, one other question. I wrote down a few of the numbers that you showed. I think there were about 5,900 stores at the moment. Is that correct? You might need to refer back to this.
5,100, I believe.
Say again,
I
sorry.
think it's 5,100.
Okay, 5,100.
We'll bring that slide back up.
Okay, and then we mentioned that there would be a $100,000 per shop refurbishment that's the plan, 100 million total. But just off the top of my head, if we have 5,100 stores, 100,000 refurbishment, that would be about 600 million. Is that correct?
So we've only targeted 1,000 stores in the next 5 years for the refurbishment. So it's not a company-wide refurbishment. It's more targeting specific stores in key locations and in key cities to liven up those stores and help with same-store sales in those particular locations.
Right. So some examples, case studies for the rest of the franchise.
Yes.
Be the plan.
Okay. Actually, to build on the question, $100,000 for a refresh in Shanghai is not going to work. You can't refresh a counter in Shanghai for $100,000.
US.
Yeah, you can't. So because your strategy is to do this in tier 1 cities, which is strategic locations, so I think there needs to be a relook at the sums. So I know there's a short time to do this, but I think that numbers don't quite tally with the strategy of in tier 1. You might get $100,000 refresh in a tier 3 city, but definitely not in a tier 1 city. Yeah.
So the budget could balloon quite a lot.
In tier 1, it will balloon.
Yep. Unfortunately, with the short time period
I
and
understand.
our knowledge of China, it's unfortunately our best estimate at this stage.
We would love 203% revenue increase. But sorry.
With the 230%, we do consider that there's quite a significant margin of safety for our figures to be recalculated and still end up with a really successful profit.
A lot of that is coming out of the natural growth of the market in China anyway, so it's not 230% purely from what we've proposed today, but a lot of that is coming from this
Anticipated growth
Yeah,
after you've
anticipated.
refreshed and everything. Okay.
I have a question. So I really like also the end that you identified some risk to this whole thing. You know, I think the risk could be further fleshed out, to be honest. But in thinking this through, and I like the detailed implementation that you guys thought through, what are going to be some of the biggest obstacles you think we will face if we take on your entire recommendation?
The biggest obstacles probably relate to the regroup part of the strategy. That's probably the highest priority and the one to sort of get right first in order to help regain some of the ground that's been lost due to the food safety scares in KFC's past. So some of the biggest obstacles is obviously getting the farmers on board and sort of aligning their incentives and educating them about what best practice is, why it's important and why it's in their best interest to pursue. Obviously, we're doing this in a relatively technical way by forcing that their processes become a profit-sharing cooperative. But we think this is the best way to align real incentives between the farmer and KFC's interests around the chicken safety standards. There may be some resistance, as Samantha identified within her risk. However, by doing this incrementally and meaningfully and working up with relationships in Guangxi between the processors, the farmers and yourself, we think that it is certainly achievable and will make the biggest difference to KFC's current reputation in China.
And I had one more question on the refurbishment, the refresh plan. Stuck with the numbers. So I'm not so familiar with the company structure in China. Is it franchisee owned to any degree or fully company owned?
Roughly, I think it's 90% is company owned, so a very small percentage of franchise.
Okay, and I think they'd own the tier 1 outlets, I presume. So that 100 million investment, total investment, it would all be expected to come from the company, KFC, and not the franchisees. Okay. That's it.
Yeah, I would like to review a little bit about the risk part. Let's assume that we adopt every strategy that you recommend. What's the risk to KFC overall if the same problem keep on coming up after you take in the equity stake in the cooperative? So can you tell me a bit more about that part? Because you'll be part of the supply chain right now, instead of previously. I won't say that we're bringing the supplier, but now you're part of the supply chain. Then what's the risk on that part?
Yeah, so we see that there's not a strong risk as being part of the supply chain, because that supply chain part is actually going to generate revenue as well from the minority stake. The biggest risk would be if you pursue the strategy and you have your supply chain sorted out if you still run into a food safety scandal. However, by having the incentives of the farmers aligned with what KFC wants, we'll be able to essentially assure that these chickens will be produced to what KFC is after, as the farmers want to do what KFC wants.
One of the questions that you asked us in the case is whether or not KFC should expand to controlling the entire supply chain. Our answer to that was no, because it's not your core competency, and because of the scale of operations that's required to produce chicken for the demand that is demanded from the KFC consumers within your stores would be massive and really outside of your current expertise. If we kept having food safety risks, despite our best efforts to make this system work, taking an indirect ownership stake and aligning incentives, something we may have to consider is expanding our expertise and capabilities to control more of the supply chain. However, we're opposed to doing that because we hope that we can make it work without you having to deviate from your focus and your strategic core competencies.
Going back to this issue, which is, I guess your recommendation is this is bet further on chicken, right, and make it secure. Was there any consideration of expanding beyond chicken, namely as a risk, diversification of risk? But also, I think, going back to your point about changing consumer behaviors, where people are more health conscious and fast food is not necessarily top of mind, was there any consideration on the menu or on the offerings of KFC in your thinking of this process?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the first part of that question?
Okay, the first part is that in your strategy, basically is refocus on chicken,
Oh, yes.
right? And was there any consideration of try not to focus so much on chicken, but kind of diversify the food offerings of KFC?
Yeah, we considered competitors such as McDonald's offering chicken items on their menu. However, under our rebrand strategy and KFC becoming the home of chicken, and also the trend or the customer characteristic where Chinese consumers really, really do prefer chicken over other meats such as beef and pork, we saw that your current offering of a large number of menu items which are adapted to the local Chinese taste as being sufficient, and there being no additional risk of your market share being eroded due to other people supplying chicken. In relation to our menu offering, we did consider providing a healthy range in the future. However, currently we really want to focus on KFC's core competency, which is by providing customers with delicious chicken, and we highlight that by also implementing the chef special strategy within stores in order to generate that hype as well.
Yeah, I just was thinking through something in my mind here, and you would prefer to go the cooperative route and outsource supply of chicken and all these ingredients and everything. I think that's the right model, so they can focus on KFC, can focus on their core competency. Can you think of any examples of how using an outsource model, though, the cooperatives and everything, could there be any avenues or areas for complacency and risks to the brand? I mean, as I said, I think it's probably the better option here, but do you have any ideas or any thoughts about, or risks that could be involved in that model?
We see the cooperative structure as actually a structure which combats complacency. This is because every person, the processors, the farmers, and KFC all have a stake in the processors and farmers providing safe chicken for KFC to provide to consumers.
I guess checks and balances and everything will be involved in
Do we
your
have
process.
time?
2 minutes.
Karo, do you have a question?
For a quick one, I like the idea about the delivery, but in the revenue model, you haven't done any incremental increase on that. But what do you think about the additional costs, infrastructure support, or the miscellaneous issue that you may run into because China is a big country?
So we see the delivery model being rolled out on a store-by-store basis, depending on how suitable the store is. So initially, the stores that will be first used will be very urban centres where it's very short distances for the deliveries. So either can be done on foot or very low-cost moped situations. And we see that way these stores can benefit from same-store sales, increased sales, as they're able to reach a greater number of customers, and that's kind of how it will come in through the revenue figure.
Yeah. Additionally, you would need to have a policy to say that you won't be delivering to the extremes of the market. If someone way out in the country wants their KFC delivered, you just have to politely say, no, we cannot do that.
Okay, so this is the time, right? So thank you very much, University of Auckland, for your presentation.